guys, this is Josh Shetter here, and welcome to the Level Infinite Show, formerly the podcast of everything. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, my other episodes had a different name, but had different name in the title. They didn't match. Well, I taped those episodes prior to, me changing the name, so there's no point in going back to retaping them. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the functions of the American government and specifically the separation of powers between the federal government. Now, this is an educational segment, and the only reason I'm doing this is because I have some pretty amazing history students out there who really want to know how this works. So, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. So, the American government was founded in the great year of 1787. Whoops, wait a minute, let me backtrack. Okay, so our founding fathers at the beginning of the United States wanted to make sure that they all have protections against the federal government abusing its power, and that they could distinguish themselves effectively from Great Britain with policies and laws that could help protect the will of the people. Well, in 1787, they finally drafted, created, and ratified the Constitution. And this was a huge deal. Well, originally, they had the original text and 10 Bill of Rights. And over the years, they've added 17 amendments to the Constitution, plus those original 10, to create the 5 articles and the 27 amendments. Now, in the original text of the Constitution, Articles 1, 2, and 3 spell out the definitive separation of powers between the actual branches of government. The executive branch oversees the enforcement of the laws or the execution. The legislative branch creates the laws, and the judiciary actually interprets and or declares whether the law enforcing the laws are in fact what the Constitution says. As we've known in recent years, if the judiciary decides, hey, that's constitutional, then all the federal government and all the states have to obey what the court says and basically allow it because it's constitutional. If they say it's unconstitutional, well, then they have the opposite effect. It cancels out any bills at the federal and state level and they're still in place, but it nullifies it and says that you cannot go and enforce this law because it is unconstitutional. So the laws will still be on the books if they do declare it constitutional in the future. But when they say it's unconstitutional, the federal government and the police can't go to your house and arrest you and say, hey, this is on the books. They can't do that because it's been declared unconstitutional. But wait, now you guys look at the semicircles on your papers, on your graphs in your teacher's classroom, and you're like, wait, there are some overlaps here. Yes. The legislative, executive, and judicial branch do have some overlaps, but those overlaps are very, very tiny and very, very tricky. The overlap for the legislative branch with the executive branch is basically the powers of impeachment and several other powers in conjunction with the executive branch. Now, the executive branch does have some overlap with the judiciary, like they get to judges, and the executive branch also has overlap with Congress to actually approve the judges. Now, I know what you guys probably are asking the question. Well, there are different offices in the executive branch, and the one that I get this question a lot from is, does the DOJ have overlap with the judicial branch? Actually, no, it does not. While the DOJ, I'm sorry, I cannot talk today. While the DOJ has prosecutorial power, they don't have the power to oversee the cases before them. They have the power to follow the facts and evidence and issue warrants and other various things that some people may or may not be familiar with, like indictments and that sort of thing. They have the power to do that. They have the power to present the evidence and prosecute the cases, but the limit of their power is that they cannot oversee them. Now, if the DOJ had power to oversee the cases themselves, then they would basically be in both branches of government. But that's not how it works. So because they don't have the power to oversee the cases, it kicks them back to the executive branch, and it cuts off that artery that would in fact make them an overlapping organization in government. Same thing with the FBI and CIA and some international aspects of the federal government. They have different powers, but they don't really necessarily overlap with the judicial branch because of the fact that they don't have that case oversight authority that the judges actually have. So that's the reason why the judges not overlap. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, well, where does the president fall into this? Well, the president has to sign the laws, and the president has to veto them. Now, an overlap of Congress is that Congress can obviously override it with 2/3 or 67% of the vote. So they'd have to have 67% or 67 members. Now it's actually 33, 34, 30, 33, and 34, adding up to 67. And so that 67th member would count as the 2/3. People say 66, and I'm like, dude, 66? You do know that 2/3 of 100% is broken into 3 parts: 33, 33, and then 34 in the middle to make 66 for the majority. Do you not attend math class? I'm like, do you not attend math class? I've actually gotten that question before. That has actually come up. And it's actually 67 out of 100 because it's 67% is 2/3. So, yeah. When the founders did the original Constitution, it said 2/3, which means 7 out of 13 would have to approve or override the veto when the 13 colonies were there. It started adding states, and states got 2 senators. Those states, it kind of changed. It kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. It was kind of off here and there. You may have needed 2 more senators. You may have needed 1 more senator. When they started getting to the 19th century, which is the 1800s, they began to get a new era where unfortunately there was still slavery at the time, and they wanted to make sure that they had an equivalent number of free states and slave states. With their compromises, which at my people's expense, because my ancestors were in fact slaves, it was at their expense. What it did was it made sure that for every free state added, they added a slave state. So they all had to join basically at the same time. So when they did the free state slave state thing, what that did is that evened it out to allow for the two-thirds majority to become just a simple vote of however many to however many. You didn't have to worry about adding a few senators here and there to kind of nudge you above that 2/3 threshold. It would automatically, majority would be 67%. You didn't have to do 68% or 69%. It was very tricky. It was very tricky math back then because you had fewer states. Now that we have 50 and we have 100 senators, the math can just go just like that. But back then, it's kind of different. And then finally the states. My great states. So the states already had constitutions that broke up their branches of government for them already before the Constitution at the federal level was even made. So the states already had some form of this. The federal government just solidified it to make it so that the states have a plan of action, and so that any states that were not already following the rules had to jump in and start following the rules, or else we're gonna cut funding, or else we might have to kick you out. But that's not, well, no, we might not have to kick you out. That's a little bit of a exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying. They would have had to punish him some way for not jumping on board and following the rules. The government now can withhold funding for not following an amendment. So, clearly they would have had some sort of punishment or incentive to get them on board. But anyway, most states already had this in their constitutions. In their original Bill of Rights, and the 13 colonies in the states. Now, prior to 1860, all of the states had one constitution. This is a fact. After the southern states seceded, then every southern state, when the war was over, who wanted to get back into the Union, had to basically burn their constitution to the ground and started from scratch that guaranteed the protections. They didn't really technically do it. They did it, but they hid the meaning in it. And so they did it to an extent, and then they reversed it and said, "Whoa, wait, we got in the Union. Ha ha, you lose. We're doing a Fortnite dance." And then they backtracked and took it back out right after they got it back in, and they really didn't do anything about it. But the southern states at that point had two constitutions, and then they had three, because a lot of the states reversed their policies that they put in place during the second constitution. If I'm not mistaken, some states like Mississippi and Alabama have had quite a few, have had tens upon tens of constitutions. And I think according to my American government instructor from my college, that Alabama actually just redid theirs, which was really not them changing laws. It was really just them doing a rework of what was already there to make it, because they had like over, I want to say it was over 300 something bills and stuff that were lying in there: repeal, replace, amend, repeal, replace, amend, and they just cut those out, the repeals and the amends, and just shortened it so that people could actually read the stupid thing, because it was long. But yeah, that's the whole structure of the federal and state governments. Now, if you guys would like to follow me, you guys can follow me. I'll leave my link to my Twitter in the description. If you guys would also like to get in touch with me, I'll leave my email in the description as well. You guys can also donate by going to anchor.fm/TPOE/support, and that link may change in the future. I'm actually gonna try and do TLIS to change it to the Level Infinite show to reflect the changes. I might not, I might actually do it. So heads up, I will announce on my Twitter page if that happens. As always, you guys, I thank you guys for joining me in this episode, and I will hopefully catch you guys in the next episode.